Why is it that some people hear the same advice as everyone else, but their lives actually change? It's not because they're more talented. It's not because they have more time. And it's not because they got lucky. It's because they learned how to think differently. You see, life lessons are everywhere. We hear them, we read them, we even repeat them. But most of the time, nothing really changes. Because knowing something is not the same as thinking differently. The way you think shapes every decision you make. It shapes how you see challenges, how you respond to failure, how you move forward when things don't go your way. And if your thinking doesn't change, your results won't either. So if you've ever felt like you're stuck in the same patterns, making the same mistakes, or not becoming the person you know you could be, this isn't about learning more. This is about seeing differently, so everything else in your life can finally begin to change. Lessons shape perspective. Means that the way you see the world is not random. It is built over time through what you experience and what you learn from it. Every situation, every challenge, and every moment you go through leaves an impression on how you interpret life. These impressions turn into perspectives, and those perspectives guide your decisions, your reactions, and your beliefs. Most people go through life collecting experiences, but not everyone learns from them. The difference is not in what happens, but in how it is understood. Two people can face the same situation and walk away with completely different perspectives. One may see it as a setback, while the other sees it as a lesson. This difference shapes how they move forward. Lessons are not always obvious. Sometimes they come through difficult moments, through mistakes, or through situations that don't go as planned. In those moments, it is easy to focus only on what went wrong. But when you take a step back and look deeper, you begin to see what the experience is teaching you. That awareness changes how you interpret the situation. Perspective is powerful because it influences how you respond. If you see challenges as something negative, you may avoid them or feel discouraged. But if you see them as opportunities to grow, you approach them with a different mindset. This shift changes your actions, and your actions shape your results. Lessons also evolve over time. What you understand from an experience today may be different from what you understand later. As you grow, your perspective becomes deeper. You start to see patterns, connections, and meanings that were not clear before. This ongoing process shapes how you think and how you see the world. It is important to reflect on your experiences. Without reflection, lessons can be missed. You may go through something and move on without understanding what it was meant to teach you. Reflection allows you to extract meaning from your experiences. It turns moments into insights and insights into growth. Your perspective is not fixed. It can change as you learn and grow. When you actively look for lessons in your experiences, you begin to reshape how you see things. This gives you more control over your thinking. Instead of being limited by past interpretations, you create new ways of understanding. Lessons shape perspective by influencing what you focus on, what you believe, and how you respond to life. They turn experiences into guidance, helping you move forward with more awareness and clarity. Awareness changes thinking, begins with the realization that most of your thoughts are automatic. They come and go without you questioning them, shaped by past experiences, habits, and repeated patterns. You don't always choose what you think, but you can choose how aware you are of those thoughts. And that awareness is where change begins. When you are not aware, you simply react. A situation happens, a thought appears, and you follow it without questioning whether it is helpful or even true. This creates a cycle where the same thoughts lead to the same emotions, and the same emotions lead to the same actions. Over time, this becomes a pattern that feels normal, even if it is limiting you. Awareness interrupts that cycle. It allows you to step back and observe your thinking instead of being controlled by it. You begin to notice what you are telling yourself in different situations. You notice the assumptions you make, the doubts that appear, and the way you interpret events. This observation creates distance between you and your thoughts. That distance is important because it gives you choice. Instead of automatically believing every thought, you can question it. You can ask whether it is accurate, whether it is useful, and whether it is leading you in the direction you want. Many thoughts lose their power once they are examined. They are revealed as habits rather than truths. Awareness also helps you recognize patterns. You begin to see how certain thoughts repeat in specific situations. You notice what triggers them and how they influence your behavior. This understanding allows you to prepare and respond differently instead of being caught off guard. It also changes how you deal with emotions. Thoughts and emotions are closely connected. When you become aware of your thinking, you gain insight into why you feel a certain way. Instead of being overwhelmed by emotions, you begin to understand their source. This makes it easier to manage them with clarity. Awareness requires practice. It is not something that happens once and stays with you. It is something you develop over time by paying attention to your thoughts consistently. The more you observe without reacting, the stronger this skill becomes. It also creates space for intentional thinking. Once you are aware of your automatic patterns, you can begin to choose different thoughts. You can shift your focus, change your interpretation, and guide your thinking in a way that supports your growth. Awareness changes thinking by turning unconscious patterns into conscious choices. It gives you control over how you interpret your experiences and how you respond to them. Experience builds wisdom is about understanding that knowledge alone is not enough to change the way you think. You can read, listen, and learn from others, but real understanding comes when you go through something yourself. Experience adds depth to knowledge. It turns ideas into something real, something you can feel and apply. Many people know what they should do, but struggle to actually do it. This gap exists because knowing and experiencing are not the same. When you experience something, it creates a stronger impact. It stays with you because it is connected to real emotions, real decisions, and real outcomes. That connection shapes your thinking in a deeper way. Experience also teaches lessons that cannot be fully explained. Some things only make sense once you have gone through them. Challenges, failures, and even small everyday situations carry insights that you can't gain from theory alone. These moments force you to adapt, to think differently, and to respond in ways you may not have expected. Mistakes are a key part of this process. While they may feel uncomfortable, they provide some of the most valuable experiences. When something doesn't go as planned, it pushes you to reflect and understand what needs to change. This reflection builds wisdom because it comes from direct interaction with reality, not just assumption. Experience also shapes judgment. Over time, as you go through different situations, you begin to recognize patterns. You start to understand what works, what doesn't, and why. This understanding helps you make better decisions because it is based on what you have seen and learned firsthand. There is also a level of confidence that comes from experience. When you have faced challenges before, you develop a sense of familiarity. You know that you can handle uncertainty because you have done it in the past. This confidence is not based on belief alone, but on evidence from your own experiences. Experience builds awareness as well. It helps you understand not only the external world, but also yourself. You learn how you react under pressure, what your strengths are, and where you need to improve. This self-awareness contributes to wiser thinking because it allows you to make decisions that are aligned with who you are. Wisdom is not about having all the answers. It is about having a deeper understanding of how things work and how to respond to them. Experience provides that understanding by connecting knowledge with real situations. Shaping the way you think and act over time, mistakes teach growth because they reveal what success often hides. When things go right, you rarely stop to question your process. But when something goes wrong, it forces you to pay attention. It brings clarity to what didn't work, what needs to change, and where your understanding is incomplete. Most people try to avoid mistakes because they associate them with failure or weakness. They see mistakes as something that lowers their value or proves they are not capable. This belief creates fear, and that fear limits action. It keeps people in safe spaces where growth is minimal because risk is avoided. But mistakes are not the opposite of success. They are part of it. Every mistake contains information. It shows you a gap between what you expected and what actually happened. That gap is where learning exists. When you take the time to understand it, you begin to see how to improve. Mistakes also challenge your assumptions. They make you question what you thought you knew. This questioning is important because it breaks rigid thinking patterns. It opens your mind to new perspectives and new ways of approaching situations. Without mistakes, it is easy to become overconfident or stuck in a limited way of thinking. There is also a level of honesty that comes with mistakes. You are faced with the reality of your actions and their outcomes. This honesty allows you to see yourself more clearly, not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses. Growth requires this level of awareness because it gives you a direction for improvement. The way you respond to mistakes shapes their impact. If you ignore them or try to hide them, the lesson is lost. But if you reflect on them, analyze them, and understand what led to them, they become valuable. This reflection turns a negative experience into a constructive one. Mistakes also build resilience. When you go through something difficult and learn from it, you become better prepared for future challenges. You understand that setbacks are not permanent. They are moments that can be worked through and learned from. This perspective reduces fear and increases your willingness to take action. There is also progress in repetition. When you make a mistake and adjust your approach, you are moving closer to a better outcome. Each correction refines your thinking and your actions. Over time, this process leads to improvement that would not be possible without those initial errors. Growth comes from the willingness to face mistakes instead of avoiding them. It comes from seeing them as part of the learning process rather than as something to fear. When you shift your perspective in this way, mistakes become tools that shape your thinking and help you move forward with greater understanding. Mindset defines reality. Is about understanding that the way you think determines how you experience everything around you. Reality is not just what happens, it is how you interpret what happens. Two people can face the same situation, but their experiences can be completely different because their mindsets are different. Your mindset acts like a filter. It shapes what you notice, how you interpret events, and how you respond. If your mindset is focused on limitations, you will see obstacles everywhere. You will notice what is missing, what could go wrong, and why something might not work. This perspective creates hesitation and doubt, which then affects your actions. On the other hand, if your mindset is focused on possibilities, you begin to see opportunities in the same situations. You look for solutions instead of problems. You become more open to taking action because you believe there is a way forward. This shift does not change the external situation, but it changes how you engage with it. Mindset also influences your emotions. The way you think about something directly affects how you feel about it. If you interpret a challenge as a threat, it creates stress and fear. But if you see it as a chance to grow, it creates motivation and focus. These emotional responses then guide your behavior. It also affects your expectations. What you expect often shapes what you experience. If you expect failure, you may approach situations with less confidence and effort, which increases the chances of that outcome. If you expect progress, you are more likely to stay committed and take consistent action. Your mindset is not fixed. It is built over time through your experiences, your beliefs, and the patterns you repeat. This means it can be changed. When you become aware of your current mindset, you gain the ability to adjust it. You can challenge limiting beliefs and replace them with perspectives that support your growth. Environment plays a role as well. The people you interact with, the content you consume, and the conversations you engage in all influence your mindset. Being intentional about these influences helps reinforce a more constructive way of thinking. Mindset defines reality by shaping how you see yourself in the world. It influences your decisions, your actions, and your results. When your mindset shifts, your entire experience of life begins to change because you are no longer seeing things the same way. Reflection creates clarity. Is about taking the time to step back and understand your experiences instead of just moving through them. Most people go from one situation to another without pausing to think about what happened, why it happened, and what it means. Without reflection, experiences pass by without turning into lessons, and the same patterns continue. Reflection allows you to slow down your thinking. It gives you the space to process your thoughts, your actions, and your outcomes. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to analyze your decisions. You start to see what worked, what didn't, and what could be done differently. This process brings clarity because it removes confusion and replaces it with understanding. Clarity comes from asking the right questions. Why did I respond this way? And what influenced my decision? And what can I learn from this situation? These questions help you look deeper than the surface. They move you beyond the immediate outcome and into the reasoning behind it. This deeper understanding shapes better thinking. Reflection also helps you recognize patterns. When you look back at your experiences, you begin to notice similarities in your behavior and results. You see repeated mistakes, repeated reactions, and repeated outcomes. This awareness is important because it shows you where change is needed. Without reflection, these patterns often go unnoticed. It also creates alignment. When you reflect, you compare your actions with your values and your goals. You begin to see whether your behavior is moving you in the direction you want. If there is a gap, reflection helps you understand why it exists and how to adjust. This alignment brings a sense of direction and purpose. Reflection strengthens self-awareness. You gain insight into your strengths, your weaknesses, and your tendencies. You begin to understand how you think, how you react under pressure, and what influences your decisions. This awareness allows you to make more intentional choices in the future. There is also growth in honest reflection. It requires you to look at your actions without avoiding responsibility. Instead of blaming external factors, you focus on what you can control. This honesty creates real progress because it keeps your attention on improvement rather than excuses. Reflection does not require long periods of time. Even small moments of thinking back on your day or your decisions can create clarity. What matters is consistency. When you regularly take time to reflect, your thinking becomes more structured and intentional. Clarity changes how you move forward. When you understand your experiences, you make better decisions. You respond with more awareness, and your actions become more aligned with your goals and values. Action turns lessons into change. It's about understanding that learning alone is not enough. You can hear powerful ideas, understand deep truths, and even agree with them. But if nothing changes in your behavior, your life remains the same. Lessons only have value when they are applied. Without action, they stay as information, not transformation. Many people collect knowledge. They listen to advice, read books, and watch content that inspires them. For a moment, they feel motivated. But that feeling fades because it is not followed by action. The gap between knowing and doing is where most people stay stuck. They understand what needs to change, but they don't take the steps to make it happen. Action is what bridges that gap. It takes what you have learned and turns it into something real. Even small actions begin to create movement. They shift you from thinking about change to actually experiencing it. This shift is important because experience reinforces learning in a way that thinking alone cannot. Taking action also builds clarity. When you act, you see results. You understand what works and what doesn't. This feedback helps you adjust your approach and improve over time. Without action, you stay in a cycle of assumptions, never fully understanding how things play out in reality. There is also resistance when it comes to action. It often requires stepping outside of comfort, facing uncertainty, and risking failure. This resistance can make it easier to stay in the learning phase instead of moving forward. But growth happens when you move through that resistance, not when you avoid it. Action creates momentum. Once you start, it becomes easier to continue. Small steps lead to more steps, and over time, those steps build into meaningful progress. This momentum changes your mindset because you begin to see yourself as someone who takes action, not just someone who thinks about it. Consistency strengthens this process. One action is not enough to create lasting change. It is repeated action that turns new behaviors into habits. Over time, these habits reshape your thinking and your results. What once required effort begins to feel natural. Action also builds confidence. Each time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you can do what you say you will do. This builds trust in yourself, and that trust encourages more action. It creates a cycle where action and confidence support each other. Lessons become powerful when they are lived. When you take what you have learned and apply it consistently, it begins to shape your reality. Your thinking changes, your behavior changes, and your results begin to reflect that change.